Go over to my cheat sheet first, talk about the top GPP stacks, talk a little bit about today. Since playing 5-game main slate, probably one of the worst that have all season. So, not history out there, not a lot of good history for hitters. So, it's going to be a very weird slate, probably one that I'm either going to play super lightly or not play at all today. So, I'm just kind of leave it out there, go over to FanDuel and kind of go a little bit of position. Kind of my, a couple of you said you didn't like this, but with the slate being kind of the way it is today, I think it's a little bit better to do that overall. So that's just kind of where you guys have any additional questions whatsoever, feel free to drop them down in the live chat if you're watching live, or in the comments if you are watching on replay. But without further ado, we'll get started with Core Picks yesterday, that recap. So it's pitcher with Spencer Strider. Pitcher yesterday. He actually did tie for it with 55 points, but still hit no matter what. And then at first base, we went with Jose Abreu at $2,900. Only got 3 points yesterday, so did give him a push. Wasn't anybody that hurt us, wasn't anybody that killed us, or wasn't anybody that really helped us at the same time. And then at second base, we had Gleyber Torres at $3,200. Got to 12.5 points, so did give him a hit yesterday. Was in that double-digit category. Then at third base, we had Jose Ramirez at $3,700, got to 9.2 points. He was ultimately a push yesterday. Like I said, not anybody that really helped us, not anybody that killed us at the same time compared to his price tag. And then we had Gabriel Arias, who, you could play at first base, third base, or shortstop. For this lineup, we ultimately ended up with him at shortstop, 6 points. So he was a push, as a pay down option. Still wasn't a bad play whatsoever at that point in time. If you went with a little bit of the Cubs stack yesterday, probably had some pretty good success along with Spencer Strider, which is something that I did do myself in addition to kind of the core picks that we had overall here. But with that being said, we're going to get over to the weather report and RotoWire for today, talk about any of those games that could have a factor for today overall. And I will say too, like when I was kind of researching the slate, that's FanDuel. So give me that off the screen. Searching the games, but the Detroit and Dodgers game, so it's not on the main slate. Just fortunate because that is probably a game that would be drawn ship, especially on the Dodgers side. But with that being said, games were starting. For there, so we're there as well. And no answer. And for the Cubs game, only a 3% chance they're in versus the Pirates. So the only real game that we're looking at potentially for weather on this slate is in St. Louis with the Cardinals, and there's 56% chance of rain there. So that's one we'll be watching throughout the day. I will try to leave any updates if we do get any major news regarding that game whatsoever, if any of these other games do change majorly in terms of weather. So kind of where we're at for the weather report. Doesn't look like anything too terribly bad at this point in time. But that would be really unfortunate because that looks like one of the better games to stack overall at this point in time as well. So just want to throw that out there as we get moving through it. But we're going to stop sharing this screen. Like I said, I want to get to the cheat sheet first today before we get over to FanDuel. So we'll take a look at the cheat sheet, kind of go through it, talk about my top GPP teams to stack, and highlight some players that at least have some decent history in their respective matchup for today overall. Looks like we're a little bit here in terms of the cheat sheet. So do bear with me there. So for the cheat sheet today, like even the top teams to stack that I do have are not like surefire ones. I mean, there's no surefire on any given slate, but we have the looks like that posted yesterday's cheat sheet for whatever reason. So I do apologize for that. Let me go over to Twitter real quick and see if I can get that pulled up. So give me 1 second here as we're going through it. But in terms of kind of the top teams to stack for today overall, it's going to be actually, I'm just going to close out of this at this time. I do apologize, but we'll bring up FanDuel while I'm kind of talking through it. But the top teams that I do have to stack for today is to be the St. Louis Warriors and the Toronto Blue Jays. And even these ones, even if you look over to my Patreon page, I still have them listed as maybes, which isn't a really strong stand for today overall. But for the Cardinals, they have decent history versus Adrian Houser, and a long list history there. Brewers, going against Zach Thompson, the left-handed pitcher for the Cardinals. Not a long list of history there. He's made like 4 appearances versus them in the past 2 seasons in terms of a reliever, but now he's a starter. So we'll see ultimately that it shakes up, but that is one of the weather spots for today overall. And then we have the Toronto Blue Jays going against Michael King, who's actually pitched pretty well as a starter, but was traditionally used as a reliever the past 2 seasons, which is kind of what he's faced the Blue Jays as. So kind of interesting today. Should be pretty interesting. See how that shakes out. But like I said, not a lot of money. I would not put a lot of money on this slate overall or even play it today. So it's one of the worst on the season. I'll still like to talk through it though. So we're going to just go position by position on FanDuel. I got Kevin Gausman here. Got some pretty good history versus the Yankees in the last 2 seasons. So I do like him as a potential play today, obviously, is the top price pitcher. Justin Steele, oddly enough, versus Pittsburgh, he's one of the teams he's kind of struggled against. He didn't pitch as good his last start. So probably a guy that we would be fading at $10,800, even though he does have some pretty strong upside. Kodai Senga looks really good today. He's going against the Marlins. He has 43 and 45 points versus them this season. So looks like a pretty strong option there. The only guy that's got decent history versus him is Luis Arraez, who has dealt a little bit of ankle injury as well. Then we get down to Mitch Keller. Really hit or miss history versus the Chicago Cubs throughout his career, but his most recent start against the Cubs is 52 points. So probably not a guy that's drawn a lot of ownership, but, could reasonably be a play, or he could reasonably implode kind of against the Cubs today. So it's kind of a riskier play just in general. Yuri Perez has never faced the Mets before. Hasn't been quite as good since he got recalled from the minors. So just keep that in mind. Probably not a guy that we'd be getting to a lot today. Aaron Savali, really risky play kind of against the Angels. Does really not have much history versus them at all. Past seasons, although he has pitched pretty good this season so far. Michael King, like I said, he's a silly starter that turned into a reliever that turned back into pretty well. Potential pitch limit. History, a little bit of play there overall. Reed Detmers is only against Tampa Bay, which was last season. I believe it was 42 or 43 points against them. Really good start there. Some pretty strong upside. They're really not getting to him today. I don't like the history versus St. Louis. Zach Thompson, the upside's a little bit limited at $6,200. So that's kind of where we'd be at in terms of pitchers for today. For the most part, I think Kodai Senga looks like the best option. But, there is guys like Kevin Gausman. There is guys like Mitch that have some pretty good upside. Aaron Savali, Reed Detmers have a little bit of upside too as well if you're looking to pay down there for today overall. But like I said, it's going to be a very interesting slate for a lot of pitchers. Really favors the pitchers for the most part today. First base, did have Pete Allen on the cheat sheet, which that's a for reason, but there's some face days before Cody Bellinger. It really just depends how much Keller you say. So if you're playing a Cubs, all the history really isn't there. I don't have a lefty matchup. We just don't have history to prove it either way. Paul Goldschmidt is one of the few guys that has hit his respective opponent pretty well today. He's for 28 with 3 home runs versus Adrian Hauser, so he's going to look like a pretty interesting option at first base if that game ultimately does go off. Vladimir Guerrero, you could look at $3,400, makes some sense there. William Contreras against Tom, we don't really have history there, but could be another option. Not really a super interesting Carlos Santana. Lefty matchup, but $3,000 is getting to be a little bit high for him overall. Contreras look at versus Hauser as well, although there wasn't a long list of history for him, which was something that I was kind of surprised by. Zach Paredes, he's multiple positional eligibility, which makes him a little bit more attractive today, but could be a little bit interesting just because he does have that multi-positional eligibility. $2,900 is not a bad thing, and when he has those big spike upsides, could be pretty good overall. Not really getting to Henry Davis, Nolan Chanel. If you want to get there, you could probably get there. I'm not against it, but more of a little bit of ownership play than anything. Francisco Alvarez, you ultimately hoping he hits a home run. DJ LeMahieu is probably going to be in play just because he has that multi-position versatility, although versus Gausman, not the greatest. Connor Joe is a guy that we'll talk about here. First base and 4-6 for Justin Steele. So he has a little bit of sneaky value play. Same thing. Maybe it was just 2,700 about that. Not too much else. Jared doesn't versus Aaron Savali, but Jared Walsh has been this year, so play him at your risk today. Essentially, not really too interested in those other catchers there. Let's see what else here. Murphy a couple days. It's $2,300. First base and third base eligible. Could be another pay down on today's slate. We're probably not getting to him, but on a slate like today, could make a little bit of sense, especially in some of those Mets stacks. Let's see what else we got here. So we're moving to second base. Second base is like a really ugly position today. David Schneider, if you want to play Blue Jay stack, makes some sense. Nico Horner's been doing pretty well as of late, but the history is not the greatest versus Mitch Keller there. Like I said, Luis Ariz is 3 for 5 versus Kodai Senga, but dealing with that ankle injury was ultimately scratched last night. Positional you can say about today. Torres has been hitting the ball pretty well as really there for King Gossman. Tommy Edman, another multi-positional eligibility guy, could have some upside if you're playing a Cardinal stack. Let's see what else we got here. Taylor Walls is just kind of another multi-positional guy if you want to go that direction. Could make some sense against the left-handed pitcher in Reed Detmers. And then I like Jeff McNeil here versus Yuri Perez at $2,800. Second base outfield eligibility. You could say similar about Whit Merrifield at $2,900. Ronnie Mauricio, another multi-eligibility guy if he ultimately ends up starting. So mainly like second base, it's either guys that have multi-eligibility or, like maybe looking at Gleyber Torres, who's been doing pretty well as of late. Monasterio, I did throw it in one of my pay down spots just because he's multi-positional eligibility as well at $2,400. Has like a little bit of upside, but nothing too crazy. That could be set also Barraza. And another multi greatest, although he's been hitting the ball pretty well as of late. Second base, I don't really want to spend too much time today. History isn't quite there. Jake Berger's been doing pretty well as of late, but versus Kodai Senga, we really haven't seen that matchup, I don't believe, at this point. It doesn't look at these guys we've talked about actually pretty good since his return. So 2,700. I do kind of consider that Wisdom starts. Was a little bit interested in him yesterday. Was all right in that matchup. Let's see who another least in time. It's a slate that's not pretty whatsoever. Hopefully, if you guys are out there playing today, hopefully you have some luck. But really get creative today because it's kind of going to be one of those slates where about anything could happen. If you go with the Mets stack, Francisco Lindor could make some sense today at $3,700. We already talked about Nico Horner. I like Willie Adames, Bo Bichette, and Dansby Swanson all kind of in this area. They all have okay history. Adames is 1 for 3 versus Thompson. Bo Bichette's like 6 for 15 versus Michael King in his career. Dansby Swanson's, I believe, 4 for 10 versus Mitch Keller in his career. So all three of those are pretty viable. That's kind of where I'd be going to for the most part at shortstop. We already talked about some of these multi-positional eligibility guys and Tommy Edman and Taylor Wall. Zach Nieto, if he hits towards the top of the Angels lineup, could have a little bit of exposure, but $2,800, we're not saving too much there. Anthony Volpe, he could be an interesting guy if you really want to play like a Yankee stack, just because he's cheap at $2,600, but career history there isn't really there for Kevin Goss. Doing the same thing if you're playing that card. Nobody really stands out from that perspective. Then in terms of outfield, we got Aaron Judge. He's 9 for 30 with 3 home runs versus Kevin Gossman. So that's kind of like the lone pickup guy in terms of outfield today. Cheat, but Chris Reed Detmer, there really just isn't too much favorable matchup. Let's see what else we got here. Not really too interested in like Brian Reynolds, Jorge Soler, Christian Yelich, obviously been dealing with that back injury. Ian Happ's actually hit Mitch Keller pretty well in the past. So 8 for 19 with 2 home runs versus him in his career. So that could be something that we look at today. We already talked about Morel quite a bit. If you go with that Cardinal stack, Lars Nootbaar makes some sense leading off at $3,100. Seiya Suzuki is 3 for 4 versus Mitch Keller in his career. if you go with like a Blue Jay stack, if George Springer's leading off once again, makes thing could be sad about Brandon Nimmo. We already talked about Mark Canha. Josh Lowe probably not getting two in the lefty on lefty matchup. Giancarlo Stanton has okay history versus Kevin Gossman, but it just hasn't been a pretty year for him. But if you go with like a Yankee stack, you want to play like Judge Stanton, maybe Gleyber Torres and like another Yankee, be a little bit different. Definitely could be something you could take advantage of, though. Not really interested in Randall Grichuk. He's got that head injury there too as well. Already talked about most of these guys. Jack Sawinski would just kind of be a dart throw if you play him there. Hope he hits home run. Let's see. Not really too interested in Brian De La Cruz. Jordan Walker is viable in the Cardinals stack as well. Let's see what else we got here. Harold Ramirez could be interesting just in the lefty on righty splits, something that typically favors him. $2,800, not a bad price tag. If you go with the Cub stack, Mike Tauchman, if he leads off, could be more interesting at $2,800, but they haven't projected seventh at this point in time. Like I said, we already talked about Connor Joe. He's got good history versus Justin Steele if he ultimately ends up starting. Dalton Varsho, if you go with the Blue Jays stack, could be another cheap way to get there as well. Tyrone Taylor, he's been doing all right as of late, so $2,600 I do consider ultimately. When I was looking at the outfielders, just kind of pay down options today. Not too much as $400, but really not too much else here at this point in time. What was it? Canario, I think it is, for the Cubs. He's $2,000. He had a pretty good day yesterday, so if he ultimately ends up starting, could be an interesting option at the very least. But that's kind of where my thoughts are for the slate overall. Like I said, not the greatest slate overall, maybe one of the worst of the season, if not the worst at this point in time, just based on the history that we do have from hitters versus pitchers. Kind of the really favors the pitchers on today's slate overall. Hopefully you guys can mix and match successfully. If you guys have any additional questions, feel free to let me know down in the comments and I'll try to help you out as best as possible. Also, be sure to let me know your favorite play on today's kind of ugly slate. Probably could be pretty interesting, just depending on who you think that is for yourself. Definitely interested in hearing who that is as well. But with that being said, also be sure to check out, can't talk right now. But with that being said, that's pretty much what I have at this point in time. We'll be posting any major weather updates throughout the day. We'll be posting the starting lineups throughout the late afternoon and early evening. If you're enjoying my video for the very first time or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps with the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is definitely one that's for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. We got Monday through Friday, MLB DFS. We got once a week for CFL DFS and NFL DFS, so definitely be sure to check those out. CFL DFS video should be coming out tomorrow. NFL DFS video probably on Saturday this week, maybe on Friday, just depending on how the time goes for me personally, but definitely be sure to check that out as well. Definitely would appreciate it. And once again, definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in, whether you're watching live or on replay. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in MLB DFS tonight.